We've already seen what JavaScript looks like and where it came from. Now let's talk about how to work with it. Before we do, let's recap how the web works and let's incorporate JavaScript in it. Any web page or application consists out of three main documents: HTML, that contains content like text and images, CSS to style the HTML, and JavaScript to make it interactive. These documents are hosted on a web server that exposes them to the internet using unique URLs. Then, web browsers that are used from client computers can access these documents through the HTTP or Hypertext Transfer Protocol. As a web developer, you just need to worry about creating the documents and putting them on the web server. Once the documents are on the client machine, the web browser interprets them and styles the HTML with CSS and loads the JavaScript to be executed. The web browsers are the main ingredient that actually run the code that you write in your HTML, CSS and JavaScript documents. Just like with HTML and CSS, there are several ways to work with JavaScript. The first one is to write it from scratch. You can write HTML, CSS and JavaScript from scratch because they are just text. The magic is in the web browsers that interpret them. You just create text. And just like HTML and CSS, you can write JavaScript from scratch using simple text editors like Notepad or Notepad++. Or you can use more advanced tools that provide you more guidance and error checking, like integrated development environments or IDEs. There are a lot of IDEs that you can use for writing JavaScript, like Visual Studio, Eclipse, Atom, and many more. Let's look at an example of that. Here we are in Visual Studio, and here is a simple JavaScript file. I've already written a function in it. And now when I start typing, you can see that it tries to figure out what I want and suggests that for me. And it recognizes that I'm in a JavaScript file, so it recognizes words from JavaScript and suggests those. This is one of the many things that an integrated development environment can do for you. Another way to work with JavaScript is by using libraries and frameworks. Just like there are CSS libraries that provide pre-made styles for you, there are JavaScript libraries that provide pre-made JavaScript functionality for you. There are so many JavaScript libraries that it is hard to keep up with. Here are some of them. A very well-known library is jQuery. You can use this to do all sorts of things that you don't have to write yourself. It can, for instance, help you to select HTML elements in a simpler way than when you write JavaScript from scratch. All of these libraries provide functionality like that. Bootstrap, which we've seen as a CSS library, also contains JavaScript functionality in the form of jQuery plugins to do things like animations. Libraries like this can speed up your development time significantly. However, you don't know exactly what they are doing, and often they are relatively large in size. This introduces the risk that a library might contain bugs or security flaws that you don't know about, and that you load unnecessary kilobytes of JavaScript into your web page when you only use a small part of a library, which can make your web app less performant. It's up to you to weigh the pros against the cons of using a JavaScript library. The same goes for the more advanced libraries and frameworks. These are things like Angular, Knockout, React, and TypeScript. They all help you to be more productive in some way, but they also require specific knowledge. Frameworks and libraries like these are abstractions on top of plain JavaScript, and you need to learn how they work. Let's look at an example of using Angular. Angular is very popular nowadays and helps you to be more productive when you create web applications. Here on the left, I have some HTML. There's no JavaScript here, just some tags that aren't part of the HTML standard. And a link to the Angular library. This is actually an example of an older version of Angular, but for the purpose of demonstrating it, that doesn't matter. The weird HTML attributes start with this one. This tells Angular that this is an Angular app. Another one is here. on the text input element. This tells Angular to take the input from the text box as data into its model. And then I can use this tag to bind the text of this paragraph element to the data in the name model of Angular, which comes from the text box. This results in this behavior. I enter text in the text box and immediately it shows up in the paragraph. This is called data binding. Angular does this for us in JavaScript that you don't see, but is loaded in the browser. Can you imagine how much JavaScript we would have to write to create functionality like this? So using a library like Angular can be very useful and help us to speed up development a lot. But keep in mind that you need to learn how Angular works. In this case, what these HTML attributes do. And also, using a library like this means that you don't know what JavaScript is actually loaded. So you have to trust Angular to be secure.